The last couple seasons, there has been a lot of turmoil about whether or not Cody ever really loved Mary. So from an outsider perspective, as somebody who saw them courting or had them in your wedding party, did you believe that they loved each other and were actually falling in love?
Absolutely. He fell head over heels for her. I think he fell for her before she fell for him, to be totally honest. But so many, like my sister, I have a sister 4 months older than me. She was all about him. She was so in love with him. And a lot of the girls were, and he's the one who picked Mary, from what I recall.
Welcome back, everyone. My name is Sam.
And I'm Melissa.
I was raised in a family with 4 moms and 35 kids. We were members of the FLDS community, which is a polygamous community run by their prophet, Warren Jeffs, who is now serving a life sentence in prison.
I was raised mainstream LDS in Utah. Sam and I have been married for 10 years and have 2 awesome kiddos.
Yes, we do. We quickly want to remind everyone that we have a goal of reaching 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So if you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe.
We are back today with Melanie and Cory from the awesome YouTube channel, podcast, TikTok of Note to Self 444. We will leave the link below to go check them out. We recently had another interview with them going over their story and their experiences being raised in the AUB. And Melanie is the daughter of the AUB's current prophet. I will leave the link above to that video. Go check it out and hear more of their story. But today, we are excited to have Melanie and Cory back to talk about sister wives. So thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'm very excited to get some insight. We have been reacting, a lot of our viewers know this, we've been reacting to sister wives. We went way back to the beginning and suffered through the entire, absolutely love the entire, I'm just kidding. We watched the entire series, all of the seasons up to date, and now we're reviewing season 19. And we're just very intrigued to hear a little bit of your perspective because you were raised, both of you were raised in the AUB as well.
So just like in the first episode, the first time that we had Melanie and Cory on, I will reiterate that Melanie is in the know and knows people. And then when we were talking during that episode, she had mentioned the fact that she did know some of the Brown family and Cory had known some of the Brown family. So we're excited to hear more of like where your connections lie. And then kind of starting off, how much of the show have you seen? Because I know some shows that are about the FLDS, Sam's like, I'm not even interested in watching because I lived this. I don't want to watch it.
Yeah, we felt the same way, huh?
Yeah, I haven't. We went back and watched the first season also. And
Just recently.
I have been in the dark. I saw some of it at the very beginning, but it was zero interest to me, so I didn't watch it a lot. So
Yeah.
I see.
And I had a conversation with my dad when it very first came out because the AUB was, their official stance on it was they did not approve of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a conversation with my dad and I was like, if anybody's family could show like the positive sides of polygamy, it would be the Brown family. And so I did watch the first season. I had never heard of Robin before then. That was the first time I'd ever heard of her. And Cory grew up down the street from her.
Oh,
And
wow.
her brother was his best friend growing up. And then I grew up with Christine, pretty closely with Christine and Mary. Cody and Mary were in my wedding. First husband. Yeah. And so, but I had never heard of Janelle until Cody married Janelle and brought her to church. So I had never met her.
So Cody and Mary got married the same day you did?
No, they just like actively participated in my wedding reception. And so I had videos of them actively participating in the wedding reception. And I was like, oh yeah. And they kind of came out as like dating stuff at a party at my house. And they came over. So when Cody, I met him the very first time he ever came out to the AUB. And of course, all the girls swooned over him because he had these blue eyes and blonde hair and everyone thought he was fresh off a mission. I don't even think he'd been off his mission for a week or two. So,
oh, wow.
So,
so many questions.
So many questions.
So he got back from a mainstream LDS mission.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And then immediately converted to the AUB almost because his parents had converted while he was gone.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Is that where you were going?
No, but I like that question. I mean, that's a very good point that he's coming that quickly over from one religion to the other. Yeah. My question though is, the last couple seasons, there has been a lot of turmoil about whether or not Kody ever really loved Mary. So from an outsider perspective, as somebody who saw them courting or had them in in your wedding party, in your reception, did you believe that they loved each other and were actually falling in love and that's why they're
Absolutely. He fell head over heels for her. I think he fell for her before she fell for him, to be totally honest. But so many, like my sister, I have a sister 4 months older than me. She was all about him. She was so in love with him. And a lot of the girls were, and he's the one who picked Mary from what I recall. So he was absolutely in love with her. I think it's more of an ego bruise for him to say the things he's saying now.
What a jerk.
Yeah.
I don't like calling people names, but what a jerk to now say that he never actually loved her is very hard to hear, especially now knowing, like you said, that he was head over heels for her.
Well, and I feel like it seemed kind of apparent even in the beginning of the show that even though they were having problems, at the beginning of the show, he kept saying that like Mary and I fell in love, but we got married too quickly and we were young and we were just young, stupid, and in love. And then the narrative like shifted, right? Like as his ego got in the way and stuff. But I was just curious from an outsider's perspective what it looked like as they were courting. So if all these girls were coming after him, another thing Kody says a lot is that he didn't really have a choice, that, you know, Christine pursued him and Janelle pursued him and he just had to say yes. And the only person that he loved was Robin. How true is that in the AUB that the women get to pick? And how true do you think it was in Kody's case? Like, did he not have any say?
He had absolutely say. And the women do get to choose. I was there the day that like Christine I've heard her talk about like the volleyball game where he came over and they met. I was there. So I was in her house at that moment, watching her watch him out the kitchen window when he showed up. It was a really big deal. And she was freaking out. And yes, she was probably more of the aggressor in that situation. But yeah, I mean, women go to the men or go to their dad or the leadership all the time. Hey, I'm interested in this man and this family. Can you go see if that will work? And then they can make that decision if that's what they want to do. But absolutely it's a choice.
Yeah. Okay. So if Kody had felt any kind of disagreement with the marriage, he could have very easily said, "No, thank you."
He's not a victim. His ego was like,
bruised.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. No, he was not a victim in any of it. You know, my dad has turned down dozens of marriages, and apparently in their book, they even talk about how they turned down one of the marriages. So he had absolute choice, and he chose to marry each one of those girls.
Okay. Wow. And then Cory, you grew up down the street from Robin, and Robin is portrayed. I mean, there's so many huge opinions on her in general, right? So like whether or not she only wanted to do the show, she only married Kody to be able to do the show, or whether or not like her family was as active in the AUB because, you know, she never had multiple mothers at the same time. What was your take on Robin's family? And I know you said you had a relationship with the brother, but.
Yeah. So my relationship, my best friend growing up was the new dad's family. And so I knew them. My dad and the bio father were friends at one time. They grew up right down there was a trailer court down below that I actually lived in until our big house was built. And so they lived in that trailer court. And when the bio dad and her mom were married and came into the group, and then he was looking to date and got another wife. And so he had 2 wives for a while. And then the first wife, Robin's mom, was able to get a release from her bio dad and marry her
best friend's husband.
Yeah. My friend's dad.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, wow.
And they lived all down there in the trailer court. And so then eventually, probably when I was 16 or 17, around that time, her new stepdad moved that family down south. And then eventually my friend's mother moved down south, down here to southern Utah. So I knew her in my teenage years. They lived down there. I knew her mom, her dad, her new dad, and so that's how I knew those guys growing up. But they lived in polygamy just like we did.
Both of her dads did.
Both of her dads. And
yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So the show was kind of unclear on this. So it sounds like, based on what you're saying, Robin was always a member of the AUB as well.
She might have come in as a small child.
Okay.
I don't know.
But she was small enough that she wouldn't have probably remembered.
Yeah.
She was very young.
I think her mom and dad joined the AUB just like my parents did too. And so she might have been a young child. I don't know where they were before, if they're in the LDS church, but they came in, joined the AUB, lived down there in the trailer court. So we did work down there in the trailer court, cutting wood for those women. A lot of those were women that were down there in the trailer courts, and their husbands were off working
out of town.
Yeah.
So,
us young men would go down there and cut wood and stack their porches full of wood. And her new dad, my friend's dad, would help us. So he was kind of in charge of us little priesthood guys.
Awesome. Did you guys ever know Robin's first husband before she married Cody?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like in the show, there's a lot of negative light about him. Did you know him well enough to shed any light on kind of his character? And it's hard to tell whether or not he's the villain that he's made out to be, or if they're wanting to ride into the sunset so badly that they're kind of throwing him under the bus. And I've always been curious.
Yeah.
In our first live video that we did, I made a comment that's just kind of stuck. I think she did him dirty on national television. I don't feel like he was that kind. I mean, the whole family is a good family and they're good people. And I think maybe he got a really bad rap.
And I don't know what went on. So
we don't know.
Yeah, personally. I don't know that because she was moving back up to Montana to date and do all of that stuff and see him when I was
leaving.
I was moving south. I
see.
Leaving, and I was down here by that time. So, but I knew the family. He's a good guy.
He's got a wonderful family now.
They go through a lot of legal processes. I'm just assuming, but if you've got a lot of legal processes going on and you don't want to get messed up with this TV show and not know what's going on, so he might have just signed his rights away as a dad, I guess, because I don't know the whole process on it. But he was just probably exhausted.
Yeah, he probably be a lot.
Yeah, and I always feel like, I mean, we always know that there's two sides to every story, right? Sometimes three, depending on the situation. But I've always been curious about that because I'm like, the amount of pressure there was for them to be part of the Brown family and for Robin and Cody to be legally married so that those kids could be part of the Brown family and that the sister wives could have access to them and all that. I'm like, in a plural family, I don't know if they're ever, I don't know. It just all seemed like a lot.
You're shaking your heads. I have to know what's going on in your brain right now.
Well, my dad married several women. Like his fourth wife had 3 kids. His fifth wife had 3 kids. None of them, he didn't legally marry any of them to adopt those children. I think that, I don't know personally, and I never want to take someone else's experience away from them, but that just made for good television.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
We wondered, and that's something we will admit and say all the time as we've reviewed these episodes and seasons, is that you have to remember this is TV.
Yeah.
They're going to force the family to be in certain situations to make it more dramatic and crazy. Would you agree with that what we're seeing
Absolutely.
on TV is most likely not reality?
I think that if they did not have their own TV show, that scenario never plays out. They never legally get, unless, I've said this on before. I think she had a long game going and she did really well playing that long game. And, but in real life, I don't know that ever would have happened. So
I see.
Yeah. Not to discount their situation. I don't know, but I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, that's kind of how it felt to me too. Is like it felt like that wasn't necessary, and there's at that time, and it's so interesting to see where they are now, right? In season 19, where Robin's saying that the other wives never accepted her children. They've never been accepted. They've never been cared about. It's always been this huge struggle. And I'm like, the whole reason supposedly that they needed the adoption is so that these other moms could be their moms if something happened. So they wouldn't go back to their biological dad, but that they could go to these other moms. So if it was so bad before, why on earth would you want them to go back to these other moms over going to their biological father? So something didn't feel right.
Yeah, they gave up the ultimate sacrifice for her to be able to come in there of being a legal wife. Another thing I struggled with that whole situation, that I struggle with polygamy in general, is that Christine and Janelle were informed that that's what was going to happen. There wasn't like a mutual common agreement, and that didn't sit right with me either. Those two women should have had more input. Hey, I agree with this. Hey, I don't agree with this. I mean, most polygamous men do whatever they want anyways, but there should have been more input.
And I've gone back now and watched a couple of the seasons, and you can see that the kids are so welcoming to those kids. And again, I'm just giving a perspective from me growing up in polygamy, but I see her saying things to the kids. Well,
it's divisive.
Yeah, it's divisive stuff where the other kids are including them, calling them or sending them text messages, wanting them to be included. And that mother is getting in the way of that because they need to be included too. And so they feed little slivers into the other kids that you were never welcomed into the Brown family. And so were we? Later on in life, they're going to go, we knew you guys were our brothers and sisters. So.
Yeah, it's definitely sad to see the divisiveness that is definitely coming from the parents that wouldn't have happened like between the kids, like even through COVID and stuff, they're being separated and all the kids are wanting to do is spend time with their siblings and they're constantly told, no, 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 no. And then afterwards, it's like easier to keep them apart than to let them be together. But the whole time they're wanting to be together. They were best friends in high school and hanging out. And then all of a sudden, all these other things start tearing them apart. But I have to say too, along with the Robin thing, Mary offering that as a solution to the problem, right? This problem, whether it was for TV or not, Mary offering up her legal marriage for Robin. Do you think that was Mary trying to gain affection from Kody at that time? Or was that an affection for Robin?
I don't know. Because we haven't watched all those series. Yeah. And so I don't know. I feel like Mary, I think Mary gets more of a bad rap than maybe she deserves. And I feel like she really has wanted the better overall for the whole family. But I don't know Mary's motive behind that one. I'm curious about that myself.
Well, if you're presented this situation that, hey, Mary, in order for these kids to be a part of our family, you need to do this. If you don't do this, you're preventing this family to come together and be one family. Yeah. You have to wonder how much of a choice was she really given?
Well, and when you grow up thinking that you are at choice, but you're not really because you're pressured into it. Now, I don't know if the adoption came after Solomon was born. Did it? I think it did, didn't it? Was that all pushed?
No,
because I have wondered personally. There was an offer that was given to Mary from Robin after the baby was born, and I don't know if there was something along that line. Look what I'm willing to do for you. What are you willing to do for me?
Oh, the surrogacy. Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to have to look back and see that timeline because that's a very good point.
Yeah, because if she's willing to put her family on the line and give her a baby, why would she not be willing to help her with her kids? And I don't know. That was just where my thought process went to it as I was watching Mary. I was like, because in this religion, you do think you're at choice all the time, but are you really? You're pressured into doing something. There's always I'm going to do this for you, but then I'm going to do this small little thing for you, and then you're going to do this ginormous big thing for me. So
yeah. I mean, that's kind of the story of Mary's relationship in the Brown family, though, is it never really gets to be about her. It's always has to be about everybody else all the time. And she always gets pushed to the side, put on the back burner. It's watching Mary, the way that Mary's treated the whole time, pretty much from day one, is just so frustrating and so heartbreaking to see that I'm just glad that she's finally this season is like, okay, I'm done. And we're all like, woo, let's throw a party for Mary.
I love this version of her. I sent her a couple of messages saying, I'm here for this all over the place. I love it.
Oh, yeah.
So, it's so cool to hear that you actually have a connection with Mary and that you actually know her outside of the show, because unfortunately for us, we love to give everyone the benefit of the doubt and just try to take the show for what it is, a show. Right. So we have so many questions like, okay, what are these people really like? How much of this show is twisting their reality to make it look more dramatic or something? And so that's cool to hear from you that it seems like, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, that Mary seems to be a very amazing person outside of the show.
I always loved Mary. I always got along with her really well. I mean, I understand where some of the kids are coming from too. I understand that, I understand that completely, being a child that was raised in this and having other mothers like that too. And so I understand. I'd never want to discredit any of the children's experiences. But yeah, I think in the AUB or in any, strong polygamous relationship, if you have an opinion of any sort, you're seen as aggressive or the aggressor. And I feel like this is why I would not live polygamy that well. I would be the Mary in the situation, because if you have an opinion, you're walking on eggshells all the time. You never want to hurt someone else's feelings. And if you have an opinion and you share it, you can be very aggressive. So, and I think that's where Mary has had a lot of the fallback, is that she has an opinion. She's not afraid to, hey, what do you guys think about this? What do you think about this? And that's seen as aggressive.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I'm just glad, like you said, I'm glad that in this season, it's fun to get to see her use that, like, being strong against Cody and being like, I'm done with his bull crap. And we're like, yeah. Woo, 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 woo.
I know.
It doesn't even seem like she's trying to hurt him either, which she deserves. She deserves to want to hurt him after everything.
She deserves a couple stabs at him.
But she doesn't even seem like she wants to hurt him. She just is finally accepting it for what it is and saying, you know what? Sometimes he just is an awful person because of this, that, and the other. But like, she's just being more honest about the situation now, which I am loving to see, because man, it's hard to watch some of the stuff, and we've seen the progression. But I mean, and I'd love to get your opinions as well on this, that Cody, he gets married. He chooses this lifestyle. He chooses polygamy. He gets married. It sounds like, based on what you're saying, he is choosing these women. He is not being forced to marry them. So he makes these choices, and then he goes on to marry Robin. And it seems like, based on what we see in the show, that he trades them all in for Robin. Yeah. And suddenly it becomes all about Robin. I mean, what kind of person can do that to three other women? I would love to get your opinions on that. Why maybe he did that? What happened?
Well, unfortunately, you see that a lot in polygamy, where you'll get a favorite wife, and they don't necessarily mean to do that, but they do. Somebody will come in and they love that woman more than they love, and they go, oh my gosh, I had no idea that I could love somebody like this, because he hadn't loved the other women maybe at that point. And so, yeah, I see that a lot. I've seen it in my own family with my own dad and a couple of other wives. Cory's family had the same situation, where there tends to be a wife that is favored over everyone else. And he goes, oh my gosh, I'm so awake to what love is now, and I wasn't back then. So he doesn't feel like he knew what true love was until this situation. But when that love comes at the expense of everything that you've built for the last 20 years, I don't know if that would be considered true love or real love. I don't know. That feels pretty expensive to me.
Yes, because he also has a lot of children with these other wives. Yeah. Right. So to trade in the relationship for one woman, and yes, they do have some children together, but some children that she brought into the family, and trade all of everything else in for that. It is what it seems like to me when you watch the show. Yes, COVID got involved as well, but they were already heading that direction based on what the other wives are saying. Even in the perfect life that Kody claims he had in Vegas, we're hearing from the other wives that it wasn't perfect and that he wasn't spending as much time with the other wives as he was at Robin's house. So it just seems so, like you said, so harsh, so expensive to trade all of that just because now you're feeling different feelings for someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't seem very responsible of, he has a responsibility to this entire family. It feels very irresponsible the way, he's not he had a stewardship responsibility and he's not being a very good steward over the family that he has. That's for sure.
That's a good way to word it, because I feel like it's the crime that Kody's committing isn't having a favorite wife. It's, like you said, releasing and dismantling the rest of the family because of it. Like letting that interfere with the stewardship that he has, because he could have been like, oh, I feel this way, but I'm going to make sure that they don't know it, or make sure that I am just as equal with everyone. Even it's not the feelings that are the problem. It's the way that he treated everybody else because of those feelings. That's really the problem, because I'm sure that would be, I can't imagine not having a favorite wife. Like if you're in a plural relationship, there's got to be somebody, whether even that might change over time. There's going to be someone that you might vibe with better at that moment, or that you're not ticked off with for something. I can't imagine trying to navigate that. So it's not the fact that he might have those feelings. It's the way he dismissed everybody else that is like so frustrating. And then to try to validate his dismissal as, well, I never loved you. Right. So instead of saying, like you were saying, Melanie, like, oh, I found this love, I didn't know that it existed, which he said before, like, oh, I never knew that that's how it could be. Okay, but don't come over here and now lie about everything that's happened before and try to belittle it and berate it in order to make yourself feel better about the poor treatment that you're giving all of these women.
Right.
Yeah. And for Cory and I, the most aggravating part of watching all this is the children are the collateral damage in this, because that's one thing that we've learned when I got divorced. Your children are 50% of that other human being. Yeah. And when you get on international television and you say, I'm not guilty, I'm being accused of crimes I didn't commit, my only crime is not falling madly in love with your mother.
Oh,
how do you say that on national television?
He's telling that to those kids. Yeah. So, and yes. So you didn't love my mother. So did you love me?
So do you not love me?
Yeah, it's one of those. So
it's mind blowing to me to hear what he says sometimes, knowing that the camera is on him.
Yeah,
I know.
It's like, are these producers like forcing you, holding you hostage, say these words, look stupid on purpose, or we're not going to pay you? I really just don't understand it. Or if he has just reached a point in his life with everything going on that he just doesn't think clearly, or think ahead of how it might make someone else feel to say something like that. I mean, it's his responsibility to take care of his kids, and to say something like that. How is that not going to hurt them so badly? And like you said, so anyway, sorry, I get so frustrated sometimes.
Oh, we do too, honestly. And if you look at him from, we just recently watched season 1 because we started to talk a little bit about it on our channel. And if you watch him, he is a completely different man than he was back then. He's not even recognizable as the same person. And that's what's so tragic to me, is to see how far he's come from that. I mean, he seems so erratic now, so irrational now. And everything back then, you have to live this lifestyle and be very outside of yourself. It can't be all about you. The minute it becomes all about you is when you lose everything. You lose everything around you. And for this last episode that just came on, when he made it all about himself with Thanksgiving, and I can't be affectionate with Robin if Mary's around. I almost wanted to punch the TV. What are you talking about? They made an agreement as a family when they first came in that they would all honor this, that they wouldn't be affectionate in front of each other. And now he wants to blame Mary for his inability to be affectionate with Robin. when that was an agreement that they went into this relationship with. And so what he's done is he's demonized, and I've heard him say it, he's demonized his family as getting in his way. Instead of looking at his family as something that he has created, he looks at it as now it's a liability.
Yeah.
Right. It's definitely priorities. His priorities are not for his kids.
And how much do you think his change in his perception of his family is affected by his walking away from the religion? Because, I mean, obviously anyone within the religion is probably going to be like, well, as you lost religion, you lost your family. But also, you don't have to lose priorities because you lose faith in something, you know? So then there's both of those conflicting messages. But when the plural marriage, that religious motivation to engage in plural marriage to begin with, do you think him losing his faith? Because you kind of see that like at the beginning, he's super all in on the AUB. He's trying to have church at home. And as he starts losing his faith, it seems like he starts losing his ability. What do you think the connection is there?
I would very much agree with that. I think a lot of people who lose their faith just walk away from their family. They get in up over their head. I personally don't understand that. My love and adoration for my family and my children is not tied to my religion. It's tied to the fact that they're my children and I love them. But in this religion, unfortunately, I see that a lot. I see that if a woman leaves or they leave, that man will disassociate himself from those children. I mean, my dad married several women that already had children, and none of the biological dads are involved at all. Wow. My own children, their biological dad stepped away. So I feel like it really does, that religion almost, and I remember that panic feeling when I got divorced, like who's going to make him do what he's supposed to do now when we left the religion. And so not when we got divorced, but when we left the religion, I remember thinking, who's going to make him do what he's supposed to do? I can't go tattletale on him to the prophet if he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. And I remember panic feelings. And so I think that's kind of where Cody's at too. There's nobody above him. And this is what's really hard about really restrictive religions, is that when you have to come and make your own decisions and your own priorities in life, and there's nobody one step above you telling you what to do, people squander that sometimes, and they're not as careful with what they've built, because now he doesn't have to report to anyone else. And now he's self-governed, and self-governing can be damaging to some people.
Especially when they have gone so much of their life being told what to do step by step, how to do it. Then when all of a sudden you have no one there, you hadn't taken the time growing up to think about what maybe you should do, how you should do it. You're just used to going around the merry-go-round and not really having any say in the matter. So I can see it being very damaging and confusing at times if you step away from that faith.
Yeah. Critical thinking is not an attribute that they want you to have in a very controlled religion. And so a lot of us grew up not knowing how to do critical thinking. And unfortunately, Cody's lack of critical thinking is now broadcast for the whole world to see. So
right. Wow. Well, it's unfortunate to hear that it's not just Cody, that it's multiple of these men that grew up with this religion that are doing the same thing, that are disassociating with their kids if that wife is no longer with them. So maybe Cody's getting some of those examples to the way he's living his life now.
That's why I was so appreciative of your podcast you recently did with Brady, growing up with that family and knowing who they are. I was very appreciative of listening to the way he talks about his family still. And he doesn't have the church to govern him anymore. And he's self-governed now. And I really appreciated watching him tell his story, because he's a rare breed in the AUB.
It sounds like it. I was going to say, on all of the shows we've reacted to and the different people we've talked to and getting to interview Brady, we were just like, wow, what a cool dude. Like he doesn't
really
seem
nice
like the average polygamous guy.
No, he's not. No.
So
yeah, but I also love that he recognizes that and advocates for the harm that it can cause,
right,
which I think takes so much self-awareness and critical thinking, like you were saying. That takes more than just being able to like self-govern and do that for yourself, but also recognize that you are the exception to the rule and how that rule can be harmful to other people, and be able to advocate for that, I think is something that Brady does extremely well. And it's super cool to see him say, you know, this isn't a good choice for other people, even though my family's able to make it work.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how we are too. I will never advocate for polygamy. We never lived polygamy either. No. But yeah, I feel the same way. We are constantly reminding people, you know, because I do try to point out some of the good things that I see on the show. Hey, this is what I appreciated when I was growing up. This is what and so we do try to find those sweet moments in the show and really point out why they were so important. And so, yeah, but also following that up with, we never would advocate this lifestyle.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And that's kind of how we are. We talk about polygamy. We talk about the FLDS and different groups all the time. But we're of course, we're not trying to say that it's the way people should live their lives. It's just sharing information. Right. So do either of you know the other two wives, Janelle and Christine, very well?
Christine's the one I knew the best growing up. I grew up with her, shared a locker right next to her through high school. Like, yeah, my family's very intermarried, twined with Christine's family.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I was friends with Christine's older brother. And so we'd go over there to those volleyball games when we come down here. So I played volleyball with Christine's. I knew Christine a little bit when we were growing up. So, and family. So,
yeah. But Janelle, no, I didn't know Janelle at all until one day Cody walked into church with her and they were married. Then that was the first time I didn't know Robin at all until she was introduced on the show. I'd never even heard of her.
Wow.
And then same with Janelle. I didn't know her until Cody walked in to church with her.
I think we watched the first season because it was like, oh, the Browns are on. And I'm like, oh, cool, let's see it. Because I did know Christine. I didn't know any of the others. I'm like, oh, that'd be cool if they had stuff on there. And then I think it was the first episode, Robin comes on, and I'm like, oh my. So, and it was just my opinion, but I was like, it was rough. So in trouble.
You saw it coming.
That's too funny.
What are your thoughts on Christine, based on, I mean, how she was treated, and then ultimately she's found herself, and she just said basically F you and walked away. I'm done with this. What are your thoughts with her and how she handled leaving the family?
I love it, but that's how I was going to leave my ex-husband too. I only saw a release because Cory asked me to, but that's how I was going to do it. I didn't care. I didn't believe in it anymore. It had no relevancy to me. I still try to be respectful of some of the ceremonial things that happened because at the time I did believe in them, but I 100% approve of the way she's handled it. Like, just go live your life, you know, and I love some of her little snarky comebacks, you know.
Yes.
I think,
she was a comedy relief on that show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cody was so outmatched in humor. She was the funniest.
Well, and she's a social butterfly all the way growing up through, you know, she was very social. Everyone knew who she was. Everyone loved her. So yeah, I've really been proud of her, watching her find herself. Because, you know, she was older when she got married. I think she was 19 or 20, which really isn't that old, but in the polygamous group it is. And so she really, you know, I'm glad to see her I'm glad to see somebody love her the way she deserves to be loved.
With David.
Yes, 100%. It's so fun to see their relationship. I know on the season it hasn't come out yet, but we already reacted to their wedding. This season's so weird with it being 2 years behind because it's like we already know what's going to happen, but it is going to be fun to watch them court and see how their dates were. But after seeing their wedding and just how they are, it's awesome to see someone get like a whole second chance.
Yeah.
You know, at love, and like you said, being able to be loved the way that she deserves to be loved. And she's just my favorite with the quips, like you said, like the stuff that she says. I'm all for watching Christine. They could just follow Christine now. I'm like, we could be done with everything else, and we could just follow Christine, and I'd be just fine with that.
Yeah. She's adorable. Growing up in high school, she was my sister. I had a sister 4 hours older than me, and they were very similar in, and I was the quiet one that never said anything. Nobody knew my name. And those two would see each other coming down the hallway and they'd be screaming and dancing and loving. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, you two are so embarrassing. Why am I here? So yeah, she's always had that personality ever since I've known her. And I've known her, I don't remember a time in my life when I haven't known her because we were raised together.
So you're not surprised that she left that way is what I'm getting.
No, not at all. And she absolutely, honestly, I did the same thing. I was like, I don't believe in this anymore. I have no ties to this whatsoever. I'm out of here. So I don't blame her whatsoever for doing that.
Yeah, so you get treated so long like shit. And
Word.
Sorry. And then she's not going to put up with that for. She put up with it long enough. So.
Yeah. I think most people watching the show are rooting for Christine, and that they were happy that someone finally stood up to Kody, and we see what that did to Kody when someone finally stood up to him. All of a sudden, the whole world was against him because Christine decided not to take it anymore. Yeah, and so it's very telling to see how he reacted to that. But speaking of Christine, her daughter Mykelti, I would love to hear your opinion if you've seen this bit, where she still seems to have a very strong connection, or at least at this point in the show. I've heard different things have changed now, current, but 2 years ago, she seemed to have this very close connection with Robin.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, and how, growing up in the AUB and polygamous families, do you think that is common that another girl within the family would have a stronger connection with one of the other mothers, or at least a very strong connection?
Yeah, I definitely think that happens. Not to the extent that I've seen on the show, but I definitely feel like that happens. Also, this could be relevant, could not be relevant, but I had another mother come into the family, very similar personality as Robin, and she tried to befriend me like that. And I felt like it was part of a long game she had going on. And so I don't know if there's some of that's happened in this situation. Because I'm filtering that through my own experience of, I felt used by that because she wanted to I was 14 at the time when she came into the family, and I felt a little bit used. Like maybe if she's befriending me, that shows everyone else that look how important I am. I'm stepping in and I'm already befriending these girls. And so I felt like maybe I've watched that through a different lens of maybe that was a long game on the adult in the situations. But at the same time, it gave Mykelti a voice to be seen and heard where she wasn't feeling seen and heard in her family. So I don't know, that's a tough one.
That's an interesting perspective, though. I'm glad you brought that up, because I would say that, or at least based on our comments in reviewing that episode where Mykelti had her twins and Robin went to help out, it seemed like most people are leaning towards the same opinion that you have, that they think that Robin was working on some kind of long game. And I didn't see that in the show, but that doesn't mean it wasn't true. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. One thing I did bring up last night in one of the conversations that we had was, in polygamy, you're sold a story that this is how beautiful and wonderful it can be. And if it's not that way, it's your fault. You need to pray. You need to do whatever. And so I think a lot of Robin's sadness is genuine in the fact that she was sold a story. And that's what she wanted to have happen, was that story, that belief system that, hey, this is what sister wives are supposed to be. This is what families are supposed to be. And if you're not up to that, then there's something wrong. You need to pray harder. You need to read your scriptures more. You need to do whatever. And so I think her sadness of not having that one family is genuine because she was sold that story, but she doesn't know how to get to that ending part, if that makes sense. So she's trying to do all of these things while she's undermining her own story.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I'm like, and I don't know if I also feel the same, that I feel like she sincerely wants it. And at the same time, she doesn't realize that she's not willing to make the sacrifices to make that happen. Right. Like, so she wants that picture perfect plural family, but maybe she really isn't willing to sacrifice that time with her husband and that time that he's supposed to be spending, that she's expecting of him to spend with their kids. Right. Yeah. So it's like, well, you say you want one thing and that sounds sincere, but you're not even realizing that these other things you're doing go against it. You can never have it both ways. Like you would have to sacrifice one, and she's not really willing to make the sacrifices that a plural wife needs to make.
The actions are speaking louder than her words in this situation, where she says she wants this, but then you hear the other kids talk about some of the things that she would do and the way that she would treat them and different things like that. And for some reason, it seems that she's getting what she wants. And so
Kody all to herself,
you know, and so it seems like her actions are just speaking very loudly here.
Yeah. Her actions do not align with what she says. And so there's a misalignment there. And that's where some of the mistrust can come in from the children, because children are so in tune to this kind of stuff when your actions and your words are not in alignment. And so that's where the mistrust, you know, they said it on a preview for next episode. Janelle says, my kids are very leery and hesitant around Robin. They don't trust her. That's why, is because what you're saying and what you're doing are not in alignment. And so I'm grateful. Like I look at situations like where she showed up for McKelty, and it was huge for McKelty, and that's awesome for her. Like she really, really needed that at the time, even if the intentions were something different from Robin. The end result resulted in a child that needed to be heard, loved, and seen. And she gave that to McKelty. It appears to be based on what we're seeing. So.
Yeah. And even when Robin was having the fight with Kody, and she's like, you need to try harder. You need to try harder. And I felt the same way with that. It's like the words she's saying make sense, and they come off as sincere, that she does want Kody to try harder. And at the same time, you can tell Kody almost seems frustrated. Like, why is like me not being here with your family enough is almost what it felt like, right? It's like, well, I don't want to go put effort into relationships that don't care about me, because I'm not a mature adult father figure. So I'm not going to do that, right? And instead, why aren't you happy enough with me putting all that effort here? Like when he said the words, well, I think first I'd rather focus on my relationship with you, Robin, because everybody else has caused problems with my relationship with you and it's affecting us. So I want to focus on that first. And I was like, oh my gosh, like focusing on this relationship is what blew up all your other relationships. And you think that what's going to solve it is by starting with the relationship that caused all the problems. Like it blew my mind, but it's so blatantly, he could have just had a big sign on his forehead that just said like, all I care about is Robin and our kids. That's it.
Yeah. Well, and she enables him to be that way. And that whole conversation, she enabled every single thing. She said one thing and then turned around and enabled him to be exactly the way she says she doesn't want him to be. Mm-hmm. So that conversation was extremely frustrating to watch. Yeah. So I feel like we were just sold a vision of and then we were sold the feelings that you were going to have. Oh, you're going to have all these wonderful feelings loving your sister wife. You're going to have all these wonderful experiences doing da 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 da. And then when it doesn't turn out that way, you know what I mean? You don't have anyone to blame. So that's what I feel like she grieves when she's sad. She grieves what was supposed to be, not what she actually created.
Within the AUB, do you feel like you ever saw a family that did encompass the picture that was being sold?
The Browns were the family that I would have said. You know, my dad talked to me right when they were very first coming on, and I was like, "Yeah, Dad, I know you guys," because they were very told not to do the show. They were very counseled not to. They didn't want the AUB to be exposed, and I'm like, "Yeah, but if anybody could do it, the Browns are so like those women are amazing. The way that they take care of each other's children and do all of that stuff." The way that they interacted was very, obviously we don't know what happens behind closed doors in homes, in personal relationships, but for all intent and purposes outside, they looked and appeared to be, and they still struggled. They still did everything, but to them, it was important. Their family was important. Their children was important. I would have put them as one of the very best examples that I had ever seen. So would you?
Me, no.
He didn't know anyone.
No role models. There was no family I looked at that I went, oh, those guys are doing it good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Everybody that I knew, including my own family, it was messed up. So.
Yeah.
That's interesting that they were told by the church not to do the show, and yet they still did the show. Like that seems so against what they believed in, because they believe so strongly in this prophet, in the leaders and all that. So if they're being counseled not to do it, it's interesting that they still did it and still went on believing in the religion, or at least they said they did.
Right. Yeah, I was really surprised by that too, because I would ask my dad over the years. He was the one who counseled them throughout the series of their show, and Robin would go to him all the time for marriage, for advice or whatever. And he was also the media related specialist for the AUB. So if anyone had any media, anything, they would go to him. And so he was counseling them and telling them all the time, this is going to backfire on you. This is going to backfire on you. And they did it regardless. So
I also think at the beginning they were trying to open up people's eyes out in the world that were the polygamous lifestyle, polygamous people weren't bad people. I mean, when I came out of it, I felt like I still had to hide my polygamous upbringing because I didn't want people to know that. When it becomes more normalized, then people who are in those communities that are hurting other people, that comes to light too. So people within the community feel more comfortable coming out and talking to the police, to prosecutors, to people, to point out the negative stuff within these groups that are hidden.
There's a lot of hidden stuff that happens in these groups for sure. Yeah, the first time we were in an office building together, because I've always been outspoken and talked about it, because it wasn't a choice I made. It was a choice I was born into. That's a choice my parents made. So I've never had any, secrecy about it. But we were in an office building once, and I openly said, well, yeah, I got like 20. And he lost his mind. He was like, we left, and he's like, that's not very professional. People can't know this about us. And I was like, too late. I guess I've already said something, because I just have never really hidden it. So that perspective of the show, I feel like, has been super liberating to those children, especially, that they can openly love their siblings.
That was a good part about me meeting her, is we were trained up in that community to not say anything, not tell anybody, not talk to the cops. And so then I get down here with her, and she's like, oh, this is normal. This is how we grew up. And I'm like, me hanging out with her before I was more open about
it. But I wasn't very open growing up either. My first day of preschool or kindergarten, I couldn't call I went to take a picture with my dad. I couldn't call him dad. So I wasn't taught, I was not allowed to be his daughter in public. Wow. And so that's one of the biggest things that this show has brought to light, is that you can be somebody, you can love your family. And so I wasn't allowed to do that. It wasn't until I got older and then left the AUB that I started to be a lot more open and speaking about it. So
interesting.
So there's definitely still some positive things overall for the show coming out, although watching the family disintegrate is, heartbreaking as well. Yeah. Which kind of leads into what will probably make the last question. Is it okay if I make this last question?
Yeah.
Okay. So my last question then, to kind of wrap up the Sister Wives, do you think that if they hadn't done the show, they would still be together as a family?
Yes. Yeah. I think they absolutely would be. And the three original would have lived the rest of their lives miserable, because they would have had to. And they would have absolutely, because my mom is 70 and just leaving my dad. Wow. And and he's had favorite, and it's been so bad. We as children have been begging her to leave for over 20 years. And she just, her explanation is, I've made a commitment. I've made a promise. I've made a covenant. Can't leave, can't leave, can't leave. And that's what those women would have done. They would have sat there and sacrificed their real happiness for the next life happiness. And and Christine would have been in a non-existent intimate relationship. And so would Mary. He would have abandoned both of those, and he would have stayed with Robin, and they would have all been miserable. So, and that's the sad part, is those women, now they have the freedom to go find other relationships that they probably wouldn't have been afforded had they have stayed in the AUB, had they have not gone public.
Yeah. So in a way, the show has given these women a voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whether it turned out the way they hoped it would, no, but at least they now have a voice to move on at this point.
Right. And hopefully inspire other people to find that voice within themselves. Yeah. But yeah, I've watched one too many families, just like the Browns, where a favorite wife will come in and dominate the family. I mean, my dad's favorite wife, it's been hard to live with that for years and years and years. And so these women just take a back seat and they just think they have to. And so they go without any intimacy Christine was 45 or whatever. She's going to go without any intimacy for the rest of her life because he has a favorite and he can't betray that favorite and be intimate with her. So yeah, it really did open the door for those women to be able to have marriages that are meaningful and reciprocal. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for answering that question. That's always been something that people have asked us, and we have wondered as well if they would have stayed together. So thank you for sharing your thoughts on that.
Yeah. And Cory's mom stayed married to his dad too until the day he died.
Yeah. I'm at 50-50 on that because I have older siblings that were in it, and I thought they would never leave. And because of the different prophets that came through and different changes, they've chosen to leave now too. So
interesting.
So yeah. they might still have a chance. Sometimes it's the people that you would never imagine leaving are the people who leave. I know when Sam and I walked away from the LDS faith, there were people who were like, you guys were the last people we'd ever expect, so sometimes you just never really know, right? Like what could end up happening. But either way, like you said, Melanie, I totally agree with you that at least those women have an opportunity at those second chances at love, like we're seeing Christine have. Hopefully Janelle and Mary will also have that as well. So at least it gives them that second chance.
Right.
Yeah. Well, thank you both so much for sharing some insight into the Sister Wives show, coming from the same community that they did and knowing some of them personally. So I am intrigued to see where this all goes, and I'm sure you are as well. But thank you once again for being here with us and helping shed some light on this show.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yes, and for all those watching, please go check out their YouTube channel on Note to Self 444, and we will leave that link in the description below so that you can go and hear their reactions, their lives too. I know that they've done some stuff on Sister Wives. Hopefully some more in the future. You'll be able to hear from them as well. And thank y'all for being here. We'll talk to you soon.
Yes, thank you all so much. We'll talk to you soon.